Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the 131st episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. As always, I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. And today I wanted to dive into this feeling of I feel like I have nothing left to eat. This is a theme that I see in the emails that I get and the comments in my Facebook group and on my social media channels, et cetera, quite often is I feel like there's nothing left for me to eat. And that is such a terrible feeling. And it honestly breaks my heart. And this feeling, among a few other things, but I would say this feeling is in the top 3 reasons why I started the Kidney Dietitian in the first place. If you don't know my backstory, I sort of fell into the kidney world and kidney stone world during my time at the University of Chicago, where I was fortunate enough to work with truly some of the top world doctors in kidney stone prevention. And I was just fascinated, honestly. Like I was like, what? I was a dietitian trained at one of the top internships and top schools. And I honestly didn't know a ton about kidney stones, if anything. And I had no idea that there was so much more to do to prevent them. And that nutrition was such a core piece of prevention. So anyway, that's kind of, during my time there when I was working with kidney stone patients at their kidney stone program, I was just so saddened again and again and again by patients feeling like there was just nothing left to eat. They couldn't eat any of their favorite foods. They were trying to do all of the wrong things. They were focusing on completely like things that did not matter at all on sort of like the good side, all the way to things that are actively harming them on the bad side. Like it was just so sad. And I found that so many patients were coming to me with this misinformation that they found online. And so that is really why I started the Kidney Dietitian in the first place, was truly just this almost ethical urge to help people prevent kidney stones and put quality, good, science-based nutrition information into the world for kidney stone prevention and also kidney health in general, both from a chronic kidney disease standpoint as well as kidney stones, because I would say all of this conversation could translate to chronic kidney disease perfectly. But of course, I focus mostly on stones in this podcast. But it just was so sad that this is what thousands of people are experiencing and feel like they need to do to prevent kidney stones, right? They feel like they can't eat any avocados, which is completely ridiculous, right? They can't eat any meat. They can't eat any bacon ever again. Like, what kind of life is that? And that is just so not true. And just kind of helping bring this more balanced, realistic, science-based approach to kidney stone prevention is really why I started the Kidney Dietitian way back when in April 2020 is when my website went live. So I thought it would be fitting to do an entire podcast episode sort of dedicated to this feeling of I feel like I have nothing left to eat, because there is so many foods that there are so many foods that you can eat. In fact, I'd say you can eat every single food on this earth, right? There are no good, there are no bad foods. There are no single foods that's going to cause kidney stones, just like there's no one single food that's going to prevent kidney stones, right? What's really so much more important is that we zoom out and look at the bigger picture. But unfortunately, so much of the nutrition information is presented in this way that makes us feel like it has to be this difficult. It has to be this black and white. It has to be this granular. And it just so doesn't have to be the case. And I find that oftentimes this feeling of like, oh my gosh, like literally I can't eat, what's left for me to eat is way exacerbated, like significantly, when people are sort of trying to juggle multiple health conditions, right? Like some of the most common health conditions that people with kidney stones tend to have are things like diabetes or high cholesterol or heart disease in general or high blood pressure or osteoporosis or sometimes inflammatory bowel disease and sort of bowel conditions, right? Like I I feel like when you are given this handout from your nephrologist or urologist, like, oh, this is what a quote kidney stone diet is, and I'm putting huge quotations with my fingers right now because there's no one kidney stone diet. That is a complete misnomer, but right, but whatever it is, right, you're trying to eat right, quote, for kidney stones, but you're also trying to eat to control your blood sugars or improve your cholesterol, or trying to eat what's right, quote, for your ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease or whatever it is. I feel like that just makes this feeling of I have nothing left to eat on steroids, right? Like, it just makes it even more confusing because all patients get, unfortunately, so often is just this like handout of like good and bad foods. Plus, when you combine all of this within the context of so many people, I recently saw a percentage and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but some very large percentage of people are turning to getting health and nutrition information online. And we know that up to like 80% of health information that's found online is completely wrong or framed incorrectly or like doesn't really give you the whole story, right? So when you combine like this black and white information about kidney stones, and when you're trying to also eat for, say, diabetes or for high cholesterol or for bone health, plus you're getting all this information that is completely blatantly false from all of these sort of wellness influencers online, of course you feel like there's nothing left to eat. Like, how could you feel any differently, right? And I hope that this, not only this podcast, because I promise this podcast will turn and be a bit more hopeful from here on out, but I hope that if you get nothing else from my stuff, whether it be this podcast in general, this podcast episode, or my blog, or my newsletter, or my social media accounts, whatever, I hope that if you get nothing else, you feel that hope that A, kidney stones can be prevented, right? And B, that you can prevent kidney stones while still enjoying food, while still enjoying life, because food is such a beautiful part of life. Whether we're talking about kidney stones or nutrition for any condition under the sun, any human on this earth, like, it is so critical that you feel like you can enjoy your life and enjoy food and enjoy all the wonderful things that food gives us: nostalgia, pleasure, social connection, right? So many wonderful things. You have to be able to enjoy all things. You must be able, I would argue, to be able to enjoy all those things, as well as prevent kidney stones or help osteoporosis or help control blood sugar or lower your cholesterol or whatever it may be. But unfortunately, I find that we live in such a I don't know, there's so many reasons why this is happening, but I feel like when you kind of put the strain of the healthcare system along with the massive amounts of misinformation online, as well as outdated advice, all of this like just kind of accumulates to just literally thousands of people with kidney stones feeling like there's nothing left to eat. And it's just so not true. And it really, in my experience, kind of drives people to either give up. They say like, well, screw it, right? Like, I can't eat like this. I might as well just like eat whatever I want. I might as well just like not even try. And like, obviously that's not what we want, because kidney stones can be prevented. Like, I want nothing more than for you to be able to prevent kidney stones, to never have to go to the ER with that pain again, and also enjoy all of your favorite foods. And I promise that those things can absolutely happen. So this sort of feeling of like, I have nothing left to eat drives people to either give up, or they feel like they have to live this life and do continue for years. I've worked with people who haven't had, say, an avocado for decades. I'm picking on avocados because A, they're an incredibly healthy food, and it's ridiculous to think that you can eat avocados. And B, like, because those are one of those things that are frequently demonized because they're, quote, high in oxalate, but A, they're not even that high in oxalate, and B, we know that a low oxalate diet really isn't the best approach to kidney stone anyway, so that's why I'm picking on avocados. But anyway, I find I've worked with many people who have for decades never had an avocado, have lived in like crippling fear of spinach or crippling fear of whatever food is the highest on their oxalate list, right? And they, that oftentimes that is their favorite food, and they feel like, and they do live a life without joy. All of this joy that food and eating and cooking and all that can bring, and that's just terrifying and so sad to me. And sometimes even like even sort of next level, I've worked with many people who really spiral into pretty significant malnutrition, who are losing dangerous amounts of weight. They're not able to give their bodies the energy that it needs to live, and certainly be healthy, because they're so afraid to eat any food. So they're literally not eating enough energy, right? They're not eating enough calories. And that's also a scary thing. And just all of this does not have to be the case. And I think all of this kind of boils down, this feeling of, I feel like there's nothing left to eat, is so prevalent for three main reasons. I've sort of tried to figure it out, right? I've spent years now at this point trying to figure out, why is this so prevalent for people with kidney stones? And I find that it boils down to three main causes. So one, I feel like there's just so much black and white info out there. Two, I feel like people feel like they have to do everything at once, and that's also not true. And three, there is so much outdated advice floating around, even very reputable sources, as well as just straight up false advice when it comes to kidney stones. So diving into those causes a little bit more to help you understand what I mean by them, and maybe help you understand, that maybe you're falling into one of these categories, and maybe that's why you're feeling like this, right? So that first cause of really black and white info. So when I often say, I just hate those food lists. Like, I want every single person with any sort of kidney ailment out there to just throw away any good and bad list, because it's so silly. I could go on and on. But we are given these lists as patients, whether it's in the ER or from your urologist or maybe even from your dietitian, right? It's like, okay, these are good foods. These are bad foods. This is what you can eat. This is what you can't eat, period. End of story. You're done, right? And there's no further explanation given. And that's just so not true. And I think, I could talk for hours about why that is. And I think it really boils down to, honestly, the strained healthcare system. Like, doctors especially do not have time to sit with patients and provide quality nutrition education because of the way that reimbursement works and all of that stuff. So they literally don't have time to do it, right? They have a gazillion things that they have to address, and nutrition is understandably not on the top of that. Like, they want to make sure that you are maybe taking your medication correctly, right? So it's not going to cause all these terrible side effects or whatever it is, right? Like, they're doctors, and they are really good at being doctors, but they're not dietitians, right? They don't have the training, even if they did have time. Doctors are not trained to really help people make those behavior changes. They're not trained in nutrition for all of these different health conditions, right? Dietitians are trained in diabetes, and we literally have rotations, just like doctors, and all of the sort of specialties in kidney, in heart, in diabetes, in GI stuff, right? In all of this stuff. So dietitians, we know how food can help different health conditions. That's literally what we went to school for many of us 6+ years to do, right? And so unfortunately, many people aren't seeing dietitians, so we're left to doctors to give this information. And I love doctors. I've worked with some of the best doctors in the whole world, but they're not dietitians. They are really, really good at being doctors, but they're not dietitians, and do not have the time, even if they were dietitians, to be dietitians for you, right? And so we're left with people just getting these handouts that say this and that, right? And that is a very quick and effective way of conveying information to patients, right? But at the end of the day, it's not realistic, and it doesn't give us the whole story. When we get these food lists that say this is good, this is bad, we feel like we can never eat those, quote, bad foods again, huge air quotes here, because that's going to cause stones. And the reality is so much more nuanced than that, right? Like, for example, we hear the message, salt is bad for stones. Okay, cool. But we don't want zero salt. In fact, a zero salt diet would be terribly unhealthy. We need some salt for our bodies to survive. But unfortunately, most of us, especially in the United States and other westernized countries, have we already eat way more salt than we need, right? And so that's that excessive salt where we start to get into issues. Plus, we know that's not even the case for everyone with stones, but salt is a very common cause of stones. So a very common contributor to kidney stones. So I thought it was a good one to point out. And so we hear salt is bad. So we think I can never add salt again. I can never eat these foods that are high in salt, say bacon, for example. Is bacon this wonderful health food we should be eating all the time? Obviously not, but it's delicious. And obviously, if you love bacon, you're probably going to have it again in your life. And so you feel like you can never have bacon again. And it sends you down this terrible, psychological spiral of oh, I'm a terrible person. If I eat bacon, if I eat one slice of bacon, I'm going to form a stone. And nothing could be further from the truth. You can even eat bacon and still prevent kidney stones as long as you're putting it into context of your whole daily sodium amount, right? Like, but we hear that message, salt is bad. We know that salt is on that list of salty foods, so we think we can never eat bacon, and that's just like so not true. Do we need to be mindful of how much bacon we consume if sodium is a concern for us? Of course, right? But does that mean you could never have bacon again? No, that's ridiculous, right? So I feel like there's just so much black and white info out there when it comes to nutrition information in general, right? But I feel like especially stones. It's like, all right, like salt is bad, meat is bad, lots of these vegetables are bad because oxalate is bad, right? Sometimes people are even hearing calcium is bad, right? And it's just like, wait a minute, like what in the world am I supposed to be eating? And again, when we add this into this massive information online where you have people demonizing literally any food under the sun, right? We've got people saying vegetables are bad for us generally. We have people saying that all carbs are bad for us, which is ridiculous. We have people saying that plants are bad for us. Like we have people saying that meat is bad. Like, oh my gosh, right? That just, and people who are giving information online. And I say this always, and I kind of giggle because I'm doing this myself, but I try to do it in a more balanced way and provide actual science to back up what I'm saying and not lean into these narratives of like these extremes, right? Because these extremes get followers. That's why people do it. But in reality, nutrition and health, but especially nutrition, is not that black and white. But we get these messages both from our doctors because of everything I just talked about, as well as the online nutrition space, that these things are bad, we can never have them. And like, that is just so not true. So salt, I think, is a great example. I think meat's a great example. Oftentimes people are terrified to like have a steak. If you enjoy steak, cool, have a steak, right? Again, we have to look at the bigger picture of what you're eating overall. You don't make a stone in one day. It's not like you can never have a steak. In fact, steak can be a really great source of protein. But if you're eating just a ton of steak in giant portions and not balancing out, then you're very likely going to run into problems from both a kidney stone standpoint as well as other things. So that's kind of like what I mean by this black and white info, right? Like, and if that jives for you, definitely let me know. Like if this is really kind of why perhaps you feel like there's nothing left for you to eat, because that nuance simply was not presented to you, right? And that's something that I think working with a kidney dietitian is so beneficial, right? It's not all or nothing. You need some salt, you need some protein. You can even eat meat. You don't have to, but if you want to, you totally can. Right? Other things like sugar, right? Like is added sugar great for us? No, but does that mean we can never have added sugar again? And if you do, you're going to form a stone? Of course not, right? Like there's nuance to literally every single thing in nutrition. Other than, I suppose, like allergies, right? Like, like if you are allergic to peanuts, like, you can't have peanuts, right? Or you have Crohn's disease, right? You cannot eat gluten. Yes, fine. But other than those sort of like, those types of nutrition concerns, there's always nuance and there's totally room for every single food that you want to eat, right? All right, so that's the black and white info. The second cause is really trying to do everything at once, right? Like I feel like there's this idea out there that there's this one kidney stone diet, right? Or there's one kidney stone diet based on the type of stone you have, when in reality, that's totally not true. And that's not, in fact, supported even by the official guidelines and recommendations from the American Urological Association for the prevention of kidney stones. In reality, all of us are forming stones for different reasons, right? Person A has calcium oxalate stones and person B has the exact same calcium oxalate stones, but person A is making them for totally different reasons. Perhaps they're forming them because they have high urine calcium and low citrate. Perhaps the second person is forming them because they have high oxalate and low volume, right? There's endless numbers of combinations why people are making stones. And so it's really silly to think like, oh, there's this one thing that all of us should be doing to prevent stones when there are so many different types of stones. There's those different causes, most notably, that into why maybe you are making stones, and that's where that 24-hour urine test comes in. Also, many times people have mixed stone types, right? Maybe you have a stone that's 80% calcium oxalate and 20% calcium phosphate or something like that, right? Plus, the type of stone that you form changes oftentimes across your lifetime, because many people, unfortunately, have more than one stone. Most do, which is why prevention is so important. And so, it's so silly to say like, okay, well, like women oftentimes form calcium oxalate stones and then, they form calcium phosphate stones sort of in their younger years, and then they go through menopause and then it switches to calcium oxalate. And so it's really silly for us to like look back backwards and think like, okay, let's base everything that we're doing to prevent stones moving forward based on what happened in the past, when things change, right? Your medication changes, your body changes, your environment changes, your diet changes, so many things. And so there's like, it's so personalized. Point being, it's so personalized. And this idea that we need to be doing this one thing for everyone with kidney stones from different causes, with all these different stones, is just so silly. But unfortunately, that narrative is there very prevalently across all sorts of places, right? And so it leads you as someone with kidney stones to think that you need to do everything at once. You need to work on calcium and sodium and protein and fluid and sugar and fruits and vegetables, like literally all the things, when in reality, you probably don't, right? If we can really hone in and know exactly what is causing your stones, because I promise you it's not all those urine risk factors. So I sort of have my 6 urine risk factors, and I don't think I've ever worked with anyone, I'm trying to think, who has had all 6. Certainly like 4, then that's a lot. Usually it's 1 or 2. Usually it's 1 or 2 very clear things that's going on in your urine that's really driving your stone formation. And so the amazing thing about that is that we can tailor your prevention plan to exactly what's going on with you, right? Like, and then you know that you only have to focus on these things, or these things are what's most important for you. What ends up happening is that feels way easier than trying to do 80 million things at one time, obviously, right? Plus, your efforts are really being like, you're getting the biggest bang for your buck, right? If you identify like, all right, sodium, you work with your dietitian, you realize sodium is really the biggest contributing factor, you can put all of your effort into sodium and you're not spread so thin, right? And you probably end up being a whole lot more effective at lowering your sodium intake because you're not trying to do a gazillion things at once, which ends up being more effective for kidney stones, right? So that's that big cause, right? I feel like many people feel like they have to do everything all at once, and that simply is not the case. So that's the second cause. And then that third cause is outdated advice. And I could talk about this for hours, but I feel like this is what I spend a lot of time talking about, so I won't go crazy with it. But unfortunately, there is just so much either both outdated or blatantly incorrect advice and nutrition information when it comes to kidney stones. And so much of this is around oxalate, unfortunately, right? We know that basically anyone who has a stone goes into the ER, gets a printed low oxalate diet recommendation from the ER. And that is so silly because A, they probably don't even know that you had a calcium oxalate stone. B, they don't even know if you had high urine oxalate at all. That was the contributing factor to that oxalate stone. Fun fact, only about 20% of people with calcium oxalate stones have high urine oxalate at all. And so like, it's silly that all we do is talk about oxalate, but I talk about that a lot, so we're not going to go there. But right, there's just this outdated advice. And unfortunately, since so much of that outdated advice is specific to a low oxalate diet, which oxalate, guys, exclusively comes from plant food. So eating healthy fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans, nuts, and seeds is always going to be a higher dietary oxalate pattern. So this is, I feel like, where people get into trouble a lot when they're trying to also say eat for heart health. Let's focus on that for the point of this podcast, right? You work with your cardiologist or your cardiology dietitian or whatever, and they're like, all right, yes, eat all of these nuts and beans and seeds and plant proteins, and you're like, great, that's wonderful, and then you get a stone, and then you get a handout that literally says the exact opposite, all in the name of a low oxalate diet, and you're like, oh my goodness, like, what in the world? There's nothing left for me to eat, right? That is such a huge reason why so many people feel like there's nothing left for them to eat, but that low oxalate diet advice is simply outdated and it's simply not accurate. Does oxalate matter? Absolutely. But it makes a whole lot more sense to focus on reducing the bioavailability, and that's a fancy word for essentially saying how much of that oxalate your body actually uses or absorbs, versus just eating a low oxalate diet, because by definition, a low oxalate diet will be lower in plant foods when a lot of us aren't eating enough fruits, vegetables, and those healthy foods anyway. So that outdated advice, I find that really kind of will throw people off really kind of throws them off and makes them feel like they have nothing left to do. And so what can you do? I've hinted at this through the whole rest of this podcast, but really what the solution to feeling like there's nothing left for you to eat and knowing exactly what you can eat and knowing that you can eat and feel comfortable and confident eating all of the foods that you love and being able to enjoy eating again is to really focus on what matters for you, right? Really diving into your urine, knowing exactly what matters for you. And I promise you, it's not everything all at once. It's really knowing exactly what's going to matter. And that will help you understand how to really eat the foods you love. Because I would argue that you can, not only can you eat all, capital bold, all of the foods you love. I don't care what food it is. You can eat all of the foods you love. I would say you must be able to eat all the foods you love because you are human and you need to enjoy eating. And if we want these diet changes to be lifelong, because the reality is once you're a stone former, you kind of are at risk for the rest of your life, which is terrible to say. And I'm very sorry. But the fact is, that's a fact. But that does not mean that you are destined to have stone after stone after stone. There are things that we can do, but it does mean that we need to be mindful of what we are eating for a really long time, right? For many of us, for the rest of our lives. And so if we're going to make whatever diet changes we're talking about stick for the rest of your life, you better be able to eat that piece of chocolate cake, right? You better be able to eat that hamburger because those are things, whatever it is for you, right? The foods you love. If you don't love chocolate cake, obviously you don't have to eat it. But you have to be able to fit in those foods that you love to make this stick, to make this work, to make this sustainable. Anyone can do anything for a week, right? Anyone can do anything for maybe a month, right? You can follow any sort of crazy, I don't know, like cabbage soup diet. Wasn't that a thing a while ago? You can do that for a couple of days, but that's not going to last. You're not going to be able to do that for the rest of your life. So what's the point, right? Like health and nutrition, again, for nearly anything is a long-term game. You can do anything for the short term, but in order to make something stick, it has to be something that is sustainable. And in order for it to be sustainable, it has to be enjoyable. It simply must, right? And so you have to be able to eat the foods you love. So hopefully that helped you have some hope, right? That there are things that you can do to feel like there are things that you can eat because there are foods that you can eat. You can eat all the foods and still prevent kidney stones. If this podcast episode was interesting to you and you are, this really feels like something you'd like to spend a little bit more time exploring with me, definitely, if you haven't already, sign up for my free webinar, The 3-Step Method to Prevent Kidney Stones. I really dive into these types of things a whole lot more, and also help you understand a little bit more how I can help you feel like there are lots of foods to eat and know that there are lots of foods to eat and still prevent kidney stones. So definitely, if you want to explore, again, this topic a bit more, head to kidneystone.com. class.com. That's KIDNEYSTONECLASS.com. And you can register for my webinar. I'm doing them every single week these days. And you can hang out with me and learn a little bit more about my approach to help you prevent kidney stones. Because again, kidney stones really can be prevented and you can eat all of the foods and still prevent kidney stones. So thank you so much for joining me as always on this Wednesday. If you have questions or topics like this that you would like me to address on the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast, as always, I am all ears. If you just head to kidneystonepodcast.com, you can record your question or request for a chance to get answered on the podcast. So have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.